Sometimes life doesn't scream. It just keeps silent. And in that silence, it destroys everything. For Camila Duarte, 7 cold words in a message were enough to erase 7 years of love, dreams, and promises. But what seemed like the end would actually be the beginning of a woman that the world would never manage to extinguish. Because when they devastate you without warning, you only have 2 options: surrender or be reborn stronger than ever. The days that followed passed like a haze for Camila. She moved around the apartment like a ghost, barely fulfilling the basics: feeding the cats, showering when her body began to protest, eating something when her stomach growled too loudly. To be ignored. She slept in fits, never more than 2 hours at a time, always waking with the momentary illusion that everything had been a nightmare, only for reality to hit her again when she extended her arm toward the empty side of the bed. Calls and messages from friends and family accumulated unanswered. What could she tell them? How could she explain something that she herself didn't understand? Shame mixed with confusion and pain, creating a toxic cocktail that kept her isolated, locked within those 4 walls that now seemed to mock her with every shared memory. It was on the 7th day, again the 7, like a macabre joke from fate, when the doorbell rang. Camila ignored the first 3 calls, but on the 4th, a familiar voice began to shout from the other side of the door. "Camila Duarte, I know you're in there. If you don't open in 30 seconds, I'm going to call the firefighters and tell them I smell gas coming from your apartment." It was Paula, her best friend since university, the only person Rodrigo had never managed to completely charm with his Brazilian charisma and his grandiose promises. Camila opened the door, blinking at the light from the hallway like a nocturnal animal surprised in broad daylight. Paula looked her up and down, the tangled hair, the same T-shirt from days ago, the swollen and reddened eyes. "My God, Cammy, you're a mess," she said, but there was no judgment in her voice, only concern. She entered the apartment without waiting for an invitation and wrinkled her nose. "In this place, too. Come on, while you shower, I'll open the windows to let in some air that doesn't smell like sadness and rancid pizza." "I'm not hungry," Camila murmured, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I didn't ask if you were hungry. I told you to shower," Paula responded with that loving firmness that characterized her. "And then we're going to talk, because whatever happened with your idiot boyfriend, it can't be so serious that you've turned into a protagonist from The Walking Dead." 40 minutes later, with damp hair and clean clothes, Camila felt marginally and more human as Paula served her freshly made coffee and placed a sandwich in front of her. "Eat first, talk after," she ordered. Camila nibbled the sandwich without really tasting it, but each bite seemed to return some of her lost energy. When she finally spoke, the words came out in a rush, as if they had been waiting too long to be released. He left Paula. No explanations, no goodbyes. Just a text message, and he disappeared as if the last 7 years hadn't meant anything. Tears threatened to return, but she held back. He doesn't answer calls, changed his number, blocked his social media. It's as if he had died, but worse, because it was a choice. He chose to leave me. Paula listened in silence, her dark eyes reflecting a mixture of compassion and something more. Contained rage? When Camila finished her broken account, her friend took a deep breath before speaking. "I'm so sorry, Cammy." "Really? Nobody deserves to be abandoned like that." She paused, as if measuring her next words. "But now I need you to tell me, have you checked the accounts?" The question disconcerted Camila. "The accounts? What accounts?" "The bank accounts, Camila, the credit cards, the savings for the cafe, all of that." A chill ran down Camila's back. She hadn't thought about the money. She hadn't thought about anything practical, really. The emotional pain had eclipsed any logistical consideration about her new reality. Had a joint account for the apartment expenses, she murmured, feeling how a new type of anxiety began to form in the pit of her stomach. And then there were the savings for the business, but those were in... She didn't finish the sentence. It wasn't necessary. The expression on Paula's face said it all. "They're in his name, aren't they?" her friend asked in a soft but firm voice. Camila nodded slowly as the memories came back to her, Rodrigo insisting it was more practical for the cafe savings to be in a separate business account. Rodrigo suggesting that since he had more financial experience, he could take care of managing that part. Rodrigo assuring her that everything was perfectly in order and that she didn't need to worry about tedious details. With trembling fingers, Camila reached for her phone and opened the bank app. The joint account for apartment expenses showed a minimal balance, barely enough to cover the automatic debit for the current month's rent. Camila's personal savings account, where she kept part of her salary as a marketing manager at a medium-sized agency, was intact, but it was a modest amount. "The savings for the cafe," she whispered, panic growing in her voice. "It was almost 80,000 euros after 5 years of saving. My part was 40,000, everything I had managed to save." Paula was already taking out her own phone. "We're going to call the bank right now," she said with determination. "If the account is joint or if you have some kind of authorized signature." "I don't have one," Camila interrupted her, suddenly remembering a conversation that at the time seemed insignificant. Rodrigo said that since it was a business account and the project was in his name to simplify the procedures, it wasn't necessary for me to have a signature. That when the cafe was up and running, he would put me as an official partner. The silence that followed was dense, loaded with implications that Camila was just beginning to understand. "We need a lawyer," Paula finally said, her voice transformed by indignation. "Because this isn't just an emotional outrage, Cami. This is fraud." The following hours were a roller coaster of phone calls, internet searches, and increasingly devastating discoveries. Not only had the savings disappeared, the entire cafe project as well. A mutual contact in the Gastronomy Guild confirmed the unthinkable. Rodrigo had been making arrangements to transfer the concept of Café Duarte to another city, with another name, and most painfully, with another partner. "The intern," Camila murmured, remembering the 22-year-old who had started working with Rodrigo at his marketing agency 6 months ago. The one who was just kind and had a lot of potential. "That very one," Paula confirmed, barely contained rage in her voice. "According to my contact, they've been planning this for at least 3 months. They've been looking at locations in Valencia." Camila felt the ground opening beneath her feet. She had not only lost the man she loved and her life savings, she had lost her dream. The project she had nurtured for years, to which she had dedicated entire nights of planning, for which she had studied barista techniques, attended coffee fairs, created original recipes that Rodrigo would now probably present as his own. It was then that the doorbell rang for the second time that day. It was the mailman, with a collection of envelopes that had been accumulating in the mailbox. Camila took them mechanically and left them on the kitchen table without looking at them. "You should open them," Paula suggested. "They could be important." Reluctantly, Camila began to review the correspondence. Bills, mainly. The apartment mortgage, home insurance, the credit card they shared. She stopped at that particular envelope, a bad feeling forming inside her. She opened it with trembling fingers and extracted the account statement. Her eyes widened as she went through the charges. Purchases at luxury stores, expensive restaurants, hotels. A sequence of expenses that had nothing to do with their usual lifestyle. Expenses made in the last 2 months, while Rodrigo still lived with her pretending normalcy. 42,000 euros, she whispered, her voice broken by disbelief. He has spent 42,000 euros on what? Designer clothes? 5-star hotels? And there are charges for 2 tickets to... She squinted to read better. New York. For 2 weeks from now. Paula took the statement from her hands and examined it with a somber expression. The card is in your name, right? Camila nodded slowly, remembering how Rodrigo had insisted it would be more advantageous for the maimed credit card to be in her name because her credit history was better. He had an additional card associated with the account. This is fraud, Camila, Paula said firmly. You have to report these charges to the bank immediately, cancel the card, and report what happened. But Camila was barely listening to her. Her mind, a sequence of moments, was replaying. Rodrigo coming home with shopping bags that he never opened in front of her, saying they were supplies for the cafe. Rodrigo insisting on taking care of the finances because she already had too much stress with her job. Rodrigo suggesting they not review the printed bank statements to save paper and be more ecological. 7 years of blind trust, of believing in promises, of building a future together. It had all been a mirage. No, worse than that. An elaborate and patient scam. I can't believe it, she finally murmured, her voice hollow. He has left me with nothing. No explanations, no money, no dreams. Just debts and 2 cats. As if understanding they were being talked about, Frida and Neruda approached and rubbed against her legs, their soft purrs contrasting with the emotional chaos that enveloped her. Paula took her friend's hands in hers, her eyes bright with determination. He left you without money, yes, but not without everything else, Cammy. He didn't take your intelligence, or your creativity, or your strength, even if you don't feel it right now. She squeezed her hands firmly. And he definitely didn't take your best friend, who won't allow that scoundrel to get away with this. Something stirred within Camila, a feeling she hadn't experienced in the last few days. A spark of anger, of indignation, perhaps even determination. What can I do? She asked, her voice still weak but with a different nuance. Everything is in his name, Paula. Legally, I have no way to prove that part of that money was mine. We never signed anything. There are always options, Paula replied. My cousin is a lawyer specialized in fraud cases. I'll call him right now. She stood up with renewed energy. Meanwhile, you're going to do 2 things. First, call the bank to report the fraudulent charges on the card and cancel it. Second, look for every email, every text message, every document that can prove you were involved in that cafe project and that you contributed money. Camila nodded slowly, feeling how a strange calm gradually invaded her. It was the calm that follows the storm, or perhaps the calm that precedes a transformation. While Paula made calls and took notes frenetically, Camila began to search on her computer. She opened folders containing years of planning, the logo she herself had designed for Café Duarte, the sketches of the interior space, the original recipes she had been perfecting, the budgets, the financial projections. Everything was there, documenting a dream that now seemed to have vanished. And then, among so many files, she found something that caught her attention. A document that Rodrigo had sent her more than a year ago when they were evaluating possible locations for the cafe. It was a preliminary market study, and in it appeared a revealing piece of information. The name of the project wasn't Café Duarte, but Café Aurora, the intern's name. The revelation fell on Camila like a bucket of ice water. This hadn't been a sudden plan, a passionate madness, an impulsive decision. This had been calculated over years. Rodrigo had been using her, taking advantage of her talent, her effort, her trust, only to discard everything and continue with someone else, someone with whom he was already planning a future while sharing the bed with her. When Paula returned to inform her that her cousin could see them the next day, she found Camila strangely serene, almost unrecognizable compared to the devastated woman from a few hours ago. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned about this sudden change. Camilla looked up from the screen, and something in her eyes made Paula stop in her tracks. It wasn't pain she saw there, nor resignation. It was fire. No, Camilla responded with a firm voice that she hadn't used in days. I'm not okay. I'm furious. And I'm going to recover every cent that thieves stole from me, along with 7 years of my life. Paula smiled slowly, recognizing the friend she knew, the tenacious woman who had worked 2 jobs to pay for university, the one who never accepted no for an answer, the one who always found solutions where others saw only problems. There's my Cammy, she said, with pride in her voice. I knew you wouldn't take long to come back. Camilla closed the computer and stood up, feeling a new energy coursing through her body. I never left, she responded. I just needed to understand that this isn't the end of my story. It's barely the end of the first chapter. And as the last rays of the setting sun entered through the newly opened window, illuminating the apartment that for a week had been the scene of her collapse, Camilla felt something she didn't expect, to feel so soon, a strange sensation of purpose. As if in some twisted way, this brutal abandonment was exactly what she needed to wake up from a dream that wasn't hers, but borrowed. The void that Rodrigo had left was real and painful. The emotional and financial bill she would have to pay, astronomical. But as she watched the cats playing with a ray of light, Camilla had an absolute certainty. She would pay that bill down to the last cent. And then she would build something much bigger, much more authentic, and much more powerful than anything they had dreamed together. Because Rodrigo had taken the savings, yes, but he had made a monumental miscalculation. He had left behind the true creative force of Café Duarte. And she was awakening, ready to reclaim not only what was hers, but much more. The meeting with the lawyer, Paula's cousin, was not encouraging. Leonardo Ruiz, a middle-aged man with thin-rimmed glasses and a perpetually tired air, listened attentively as Camilla explained the situation. When she finished, the lawyer's sigh was more eloquent than any legal analysis he could offer. Legally, Camilla, your position is weak, he finally said, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. Without a formal partnership contract, without your name on the bank accounts or on the project documents, and without a clear record of your economic contributions separate from his, it's very difficult to prove that it wasn't simply a personal relationship where you shared expenses and ideas. But I have emails, Camilla protested. I have messages where we talk about our business, where we discuss project details. And they will be considered, of course. Leonardo nodded. But you're facing months, possibly years of legal battle with an uncertain outcome. The courts are saturated, and these cases of financial disputes between unmarried couples are complicated. Besides, he paused, as if measuring his words. You mentioned that he has gone to another city, possibly with plans to leave the country. If he manages to establish himself outside of Spanish jurisdiction, everything becomes exponentially more complicated. Paula, who had remained unusually quiet, intervened with a tense voice. Are you saying that this scoundrel can simply disappear with my friend's money, and there's nothing we can do? Leonardo raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. I'm saying that the legal path is long, costly, and without guarantees. We can try, of course. File a complaint for misappropriation, seek a court order to freeze the accounts if they're still active in Spain, but it would be irresponsible of me not to warn you about the difficulties. Camilla felt how the hope she had begun to build crumbled again. The rage she had felt the day before seemed to have transformed into a bitter resignation. And the credit card, she asked, clinging to the only part that seemed clearer. Those expenses were made without my knowledge or consent. Here, at least, Leonardo seemed more optimistic. There you have a more solid case. You have reported the charges as fraudulent. You have cancelled the card, and there is a clear pattern of expenses that differ from your usual habits. The bank will probably investigate and could reverse some charges, although I can't guarantee you that all of them will be. Camilla nodded slowly, processing the information. She felt as if she were in a chess game, where she had already lost the queen and several important pieces, and now had to decide whether to continue fighting with the little she had left or accept defeat. How much would it cost, she finally asked, to try to recover something through legal means? Leonardo named a figure that made Camilla and Paula exchange concerned looks. It was almost everything that remained in Camilla's personal account. And honestly, that would be just the beginning, added the lawyer, depending on how the case develops. I understand, Camilla interrupted him, her mind working quickly. And if I decide not to follow that path, what happens with the debts? With the credit card? With the apartment mortgage? The mortgage is in both of your names, according to what you've told me, Leonardo responded. You could try to renegotiate it in your name only, although with your current financial situation, the bank probably wouldn't accept it. The other option would be to sell the apartment to settle the debt, although in the current market, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew that she would probably have to sell it below its real value to get a quick sale, and that would barely cover the pending mortgage. And the card is only in my name, Camilla murmured. That debt is legally mine, even if I can prove that it wasn't me who made those expenses. Until the bank completes its investigation, yes, Leonardo confirmed. Although I must say that banks usually resolve these claims in favor of the client when there is clear evidence of fraud. Paula, who had been taking notes frenetically, looked up with a frustrated expression. All of this is so unfair. So systematically designed to favor those who act in bad faith. Leonardo shrugged with a resignation that betrayed years of facing these situations. The legal system is not always fair, certainly. It's designed with certain assumptions and protections that sometimes can be exploited by those who know its weaknesses. He paused, looking directly at Camilla. My professional advice is that we file a complaint for misappropriation, if for no other reason, to make an official record of what happened. As for pursuing the case further, it would have to be your decision, based on your resources and on what you're willing to invest in this process, both financially and emotionally.